Hello, and welcome to part one of our three-part series, Demystifying the Cloud, where we'll be sharing our thoughts and experiments to hopefully help you make a success of your cloud adoption journey at every stage, to help you find your path to success on the cloud. I'm Matt, a principal software craftsperson from Codurance, and I generally help support our delivery teams that work with our clients and generally provide a layer of tech governance and support along the way. I'm joined here by Rodrigo.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo Nascimento. I'm the head of platform engineering for Codurance. I joined Codurance about a year ago with the challenge to develop the platform engineering practice and hopefully help customers to make the most of cloud native solutions.
Brilliant. Let's have a quick intro to Codurance before we get going. So we are a global software consultancy with the values of XP and software craftsmanship at our core. And our mission really is to help businesses build a better, sustainable tech capability that supports growth and innovation. Okay, let's get started with video one, shall we? How to migrate to the cloud with confidence. So, Rodrigo, how do you think, as a business, you might prepare yourself for cloud migration? Obviously, it's quite a big step. There's lots of things involved. So, what are some of the things that a business can do to help themselves prepare for a cloud migration?
Well, I think that the first step is to understand why you're migrating to the cloud. I think a lot of organizations, they think that just by moving to the cloud, they can get some technical benefits that will help the business. But without understanding which ones, it's really hard, So that's why a clearly, or at least a well-defined reason why you're moving to the cloud usually help. It could be, for example, for cost savings perspective, by moving to the cloud, you may want to take advantage, for example, of elasticity capabilities, where you can basically increase and decrease your computing power depends on the demand that you have. A good example would be with retailers, where they have these seasonal peaks, during Mother's Day and Christmas, for example, and then you don't want to invest in new hardware just for that. So you can actually just pay a bit more and use a bit more of computing power or storage or whatever you need to cope with that load, and then you just shut it down after you use it.
Yeah, definitely. I think also it's kind of understanding how a cloud migration might fit into the wider tech vision for your organization as well, right? We don't just move to the cloud for the sake of it. Ideally, as you said before, we're trying to meet some business objective and some business drivers. So understanding from a technical perspective, the wider technical vision of how your cloud migration plays into that, I think is going to be really key.
Yeah, I think that's another good point to mention is usually moving to the cloud opens you to dozens new types of service, and that can usually promote innovation as well, because usually when you want to try something on premises, it's quite expensive. Sometimes because the hardware is too expensive. For example, if you want to make some experiments with machine learning, maybe buying a hardware that can support that, it would be very expensive. But you could try that as a service in the cloud. So you can just spin up some instances that can cope with that machine learning load that you need. And then after you try it, you can just shut down, or you can even try other things around data analysis, big data, and things like that, which I think that would be one of the main benefits that you can have by moving to the cloud.
Yeah, great points. I think so. Talking a bit about benefits then, how might you go about measuring some of these benefits that you might be getting from the cloud, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because this is not exclusive to cloud migration projects. I think in general, the benefits realization, to demonstrate the benefits realization is a challenge. So I think that once you have your defined reason why you're moving to the cloud, it's good to derive some objectives and then try to understand how you can measure a way to measure how to achieve them, and then put in place some mechanisms to collect data and potentially analyze them. I know that sometimes it's hard. For example, if you go for, again, with example of cost savings, for example, you need to find a way to collect historical data about how much you're spending and how you're spending on your on-premises data centers, and try to compare that to the costs in the cloud and measure that over time and see if you are achieving that benefit or not.
Yeah, I think a lot of cloud providers also provide some quite nice tooling around some of these things, don't they? So
True.
particularly around cost usage and sort of predicting how costs might go over sort of a certain time horizon can be really useful.
Yeah, definitely having the right KPIs in place and the right tools to analyze it are critical.
Yeah, and of course, I think it's sort of tying it back to the underlying business drivers, isn't it? Of course, so what benefits are we getting, and are we seeing those not just from a tech perspective, perhaps, but also from the business? Are we meeting the benefits and drivers that we hope to achieve through greater scalability, like you said before, with in the e-commerce example there? Are we able to scale up and scale down at ease, or are we getting better development, productivity, whatever else it might be? Kind of putting in mechanisms to sort of try and track that is going to be really important.
Sure.
So I guess, as I was saying before, it's quite a big step to perhaps move to the cloud for the first time. I'm sure a lot of people will be thinking, kind of, what are some of the things that I should be thinking about in making that step? So what do you think that some of the key things to consider might be for those?
Yeah, that's the implementation part of the strategies, and it is usually very it's a huge challenge. One thing is for you to design how it's going to be, but then of course you need to make some choices on how to implement. Some cloud providers, they use a model in terms of migration strategy that they call the 6 R's. I usually see only 3 of them really used. The first one is the rehost. Is the famous lift and shift, just getting whatever you have on premises and replicating that in the cloud and see if it works, right? And the second one is the replatform, is when you start to experiment with some new services. Usually some cloud managed services, I think probably databases are, I think, the first one that people usually use. So instead of creating a virtual machine on the cloud and migrating your database to that virtual machine, sometimes companies they try to experiment with managed database solutions, so they can free up from the overhead of managing the hardware, the operating system, and the database application itself, just by exposing that to the application as a database service. That's actually one of the probably the good examples for the replatforming. And the third one, which I think for me is the most important, is the re-architecture, right? So that's when you have the opportunity to review your technical landscape and do some kind of rationalization on your applications, and probably redesign in a way that they adapt better to your business needs. Okay, and then it's usually an exercise that's it's very tied to your business objectives, and see how that's going to support. And it's really good because then it's the time that you have a chance to implement full traceability from your business objectives down to your technical landscape, and you form a proper ecosystem that can support the business.
Yeah, great. I like the 3 R's there. Really good.
Yeah.
I think also it's kind of worth sort of thinking about as well the impact your cloud migration might have on the wider organization too. Thinking about things like skills and experience, team structures, for example. I think how well set up is your organization to move to the cloud? Do they have experience in cloud providers and cloud technologies is going to be worth considering. And if they don't, what's your plan to close that skills and experience gap?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of roles that they may not be relevant anymore. Like if you don't have a data center, so maybe people that used to maintain hardware and low-level software like application engines and or database engines and things like that, they may need to be retrained to adapt to the cloud services and know how to maintain cloud services. And usually that has impact on your organizational structure as well. And those people are usually moved around, and the departments they are usually restructured in a way that you can better support the cloud technologies. And I think there's another important point is that usually when you deal with the main cloud providers, it's easier for you to find people in the market, to hire people to work with the main cloud providers. It's easier than you used to hire people to deal with your specific hardware from your data center. So I think that's in terms of this cloud movement. I think it kind of lowered a little bit the complexity of hiring people to support your technology as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think also thinking about when I've seen teams or companies move to the cloud, I think they're often overwhelmed by the sheer size of the number of services available on cloud platforms today. I think there's been lots of innovation and sort of proliferation almost of new tools and services available on cloud platforms. And that can be quite overwhelming at first if you're new to a cloud platform. So I almost think this plays into the sort of the wider tech vision for an organization. Like, which of those cloud services are you going to be using the most of? Which ones are sort of most aligned to where you want to be and kind of are aligned with your tech vision? I think that's going to be important, because I think that provides some guidance and some guardrails for engineering teams, so to know which services they should be using. Otherwise, there's a danger of lots of different services being used that actually might not particularly hang together so well in terms of your overall tech vision.
True. Yeah, that's actually a quite important point as well, because we talked about technology, we talked about people, but processes are really important as well, in the way that you're going to change your operational process to support things in the cloud, or even to develop new capabilities using the cloud. So I think there's a change on the paradigm to use the cloud on the way that you set up and you implement your processes as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think often teams kind of want a little bit of cloud native sprinkled in there as well. And so thinking about how much of that sort of cloud native do you want to bring into your platform, whether that be managed services or even kind of moving towards sort of serverless paradigms, for example, understanding whereabouts in your system you want to include those technologies, and kind of why, and also why is useful guidance for engineering teams.
Definitely.
Great stuff. Okay, well, thanks for listening to our first video. Keep an eye out for the second one in the series, where we'll be sharing our thoughts around the migration process itself, and some of the challenges that you might face along the way.
Thank you.
See you then. Bye.